Hello everyone, and welcome back to our channel. Today, we have a very special story for you. It is not a happy story, but it is an important one. It is about one of the most famous and dangerous men of modern history, Osama bin Laden. You may have heard his name in the news, in books, or in movies. But who was he really? Where did he come from? How did a young boy from a very rich family in Saudi Arabia become the most wanted man in the world? And how did his story finally end? In this video, we are going to tell you the full story of Osama bin Laden. We will start from his childhood, go through his teenage years, his beliefs, his wars, and the tragic events that changed the world forever, especially the September 11th attacks in the United States. Finally, we will see how his life ended in 2011. This story is told in simple English so that English learners like you can follow along, improve your listening, and learn history at the same time. So sit back, relax, and get ready for a journey through one of the most important and dramatic stories of the 21st century. Let's begin with Part 1, the childhood of Osama bin Laden. Childhood and family. Osama bin Laden was born on March 10th, 1957, in the city of Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. His full name was Osama bin Mohammed bin Awad bin Laden. He came from one of the richest families in Saudi Arabia. His father, Mohammed bin Laden, was a very successful businessman. He was originally from Yemen, but moved to Saudi Arabia when he was young. There, he started a construction company that became extremely important. His company built many big projects for the Saudi royal family, including palaces, roads, and even mosques. Because of this, the bin Laden family became very rich and very close to the royal family. Osama's mother was named Alia Ghanim, and she was from Syria. Osama was her only son with Mohammed bin Laden, but Mohammed had many other wives and many children. In fact, Osama had more than 50 brothers and sisters. This made his family very large, but also very complicated. As a child, Osama grew up in wealth and privilege. He lived in a big house, had access to the best schools, and never had to worry about money. But even though his family was rich, Osama's life was not always simple. His parents separated soon after his birth, and he mostly lived with his mother. From a young age, Osama was known as a quiet and shy boy. Teachers said he was respectful, polite, and religious. He studied in schools in Jeddah, a city on the coast of Saudi Arabia. There, he learned about Islam, mathematics, and other subjects. But the subject that interested him most was Islamic studies and religion. At the age of 13, something very important happened in Osama's life. His father, Mohammed bin Laden, died in a plane crash. This was a big shock for the family. Even though the family was still rich, Osama felt the loss deeply. Many people believe this event made him more serious and more focused on religion. During his teenage years, Osama started to grow a long beard and followed religious practices more strictly. He avoided modern entertainment like movies or music and preferred to spend time reading the Quran and religious books. Even though he was born into one of the wealthiest families in the Middle East, Osama began to feel that money and luxury were not the most important things in life. Instead, he believed strongly in religion and in the idea that Muslims should live simply and follow Islamic teachings closely. This was the beginning of Osama bin Laden's journey, a journey that would take him from the comfortable life of a Saudi prince-like child to the deserts of Afghanistan, and later to the center of the world stage. Education and early beliefs. After his father's death, Osama bin Laden continued his studies in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. He attended a private school where he was taught both modern subjects like mathematics and science and traditional Islamic studies. When he grew older, Osama went to King Abdulaziz University in Jeddah. This was one of the most respected universities in Saudi Arabia. At university, he studied economics and management. His family wanted him to prepare for business because the bin Laden family had a huge construction company. Many people thought Osama would simply become another successful businessman like his father. But at the university, something important happened. Osama met a number of religious teachers and scholars who had strong ideas about Islam and politics. Some of these teachers believed that Muslims needed to fight against foreign influence and against governments that were not purely Islamic. One of the most important teachers for Osama was Abdullah Azzam, a Palestinian scholar. Azzam believed in the idea of jihad, which means struggle. For him, jihad was not only about personal spiritual struggle, but also about fighting to protect Muslim lands from enemies. He taught that Muslims everywhere should unite to defend Islam whenever it was under attack. These ideas made a deep impression on young Osama. He was already serious and religious, but now he started to think about the world in a different way. He began to believe that Muslims had a duty to fight, not just to pray. At the same time, Osama was also influenced by the political situation in the Middle East. In the late 1970s, there were many problems. The Arab-Israeli conflict was still going on. Many Muslims felt their governments were corrupt or too close to Western countries. The Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan in 1979, which shocked the Muslim world. The invasion of Afghanistan became the turning point for Osama. He saw it as a clear example of a foreign power attacking a Muslim land. He believed that it was his duty and the duty of all Muslims to go and help the Afghans. By this time, Osama was in his early 20s. He was tall, thin, and calm, with a long beard. He was married and already had children. Instead of living a rich, comfortable life in Saudi Arabia, he began to think about leaving everything behind to join a war. This was the moment when Osama bin Laden started to change from a rich student into a fighter with a mission. His religious beliefs, combined with the world events of the time, pushed him in a new and dangerous direction. The Afghan War and the rise of Osama bin Laden. In 1979, the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan. This was shocking news for Muslims around the world. Afghanistan was a poor but proud Muslim country, and suddenly it was occupied by one of the most powerful armies in the world. For Osama bin Laden, this invasion felt personal. He believed it was his duty as a Muslim to defend Afghanistan. At that time, thousands of young men from many Muslim countries began traveling to Afghanistan to fight. They became known as the Afghan Arabs. Osama decided to join them. He left his rich life in Saudi Arabia and traveled to Pakistan, which was right next to Afghanistan. From there, he moved into the Afghan mountains to help the fighters. At first, Osama was not a soldier. He was more of an organizer and supporter. He used his wealth and family connections to bring money, weapons, and supplies to the Afghan fighters. He built training camps, bought construction equipment to dig tunnels, and helped set up hospitals for the wounded. But over time, Osama also became a fighter himself. He joined battles against the Soviets, and his reputation grew. Many people said he was brave, quiet, and very committed. He lived simply, ate little, and stayed close to his men. For the Afghan fighters, he was not just a rich man from Saudi Arabia. He became a respected leader. During these years, Osama also became close to Abdullah Azzam, his teacher. Together, they created an organization to bring foreign volunteers into Afghanistan. This network later became the foundation of something much bigger, al-Qaeda. By the mid-1980s, Osama bin Laden was famous among the Afghan fighters. He was seen as a hero, a man who gave up luxury to live in the mountains and fight for Islam. The war lasted for nearly 10 years, and finally, in 1989, the Soviet Union withdrew from Afghanistan. The Afghan fighters, including Osama, felt they had achieved a great victory. But after the war, a big question remained. What should they do next? For Osama, the answer was clear. He believed that if Muslims could defeat a superpower like the Soviet Union, then they could also fight against other enemies, especially the United States and its allies. The Afghan War was the place where Osama bin Laden transformed from a rich student into a warrior and a leader. It gave him experience, confidence, and a powerful network of followers who would later become the core of al-Qaeda. The birth of al-Qaeda and the attacks of the 1990s. After the Soviets left Afghanistan in 1989, Osama bin Laden returned to Saudi Arabia. At first, he was welcomed as a hero. Many people respected him because he had fought in Afghanistan. But soon, Osama began to criticize the Saudi government. Why? Because in 1990, Iraq, led by Saddam Hussein, invaded Kuwait. The Saudi royal family became very worried. They feared that Saddam might also attack Saudi Arabia. So, they invited the United States and other Western countries to send soldiers to protect Saudi Arabia. For Osama bin Laden, this was unacceptable. He believed that Muslims should defend their own lands without the help of non-Muslims. He offered to bring his Afghan fighters to protect Saudi Arabia, but the royal family refused. Instead, they welcomed American troops. Osama was angry. He felt betrayed by the Saudi leaders and began to openly criticize them. Because of this, the government placed him under watch. Eventually, in 1991, he left Saudi Arabia and went to Sudan. In Sudan, Osama found a safe place to live and work. He built businesses, farms, and training camps. But most importantly, he created a new organization, al-Qaeda, which means the base. Al-Qaeda was more than just a group of fighters. It was a network that connected radical Muslims from different countries. Osama wanted al-Qaeda to fight against what he saw as enemies of Islam, especially the United States and its allies. During the early 1990s, al-Qaeda began to plan and carry out attacks. In 1992, They bombed a hotel in Yemen where American soldiers were staying. In 1993, al-Qaeda was linked to the first attack on the World Trade Center in New York City. Even though that bombing did not destroy the towers, it showed the world that a new kind of threat was rising. By the mid-1990s, Osama was becoming more dangerous. The United States and Saudi Arabia pressured Sudan to expel him. In 1996, Osama left Sudan and returned to Afghanistan, which was now controlled by the Taliban, a hardline Islamic group. The Taliban welcomed Osama and gave him a safe haven. From Afghanistan, Osama released public messages declaring war against the United States. In 1996, he issued a statement saying that Americans should leave Saudi Arabia. In 1998, he announced a fatwa, or religious order, calling for Muslims to kill Americans and their allies everywhere. That same year, al-Qaeda carried out one of its deadliest attacks, the bombings of the U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania. These explosions killed more than 200 people and injured thousands. The world was shocked, and Osama bin Laden's name was now on the FBI's most wanted list. In 2000, al-Qaeda struck again. This time, they attacked the American warship USS Cole in Yemen. A small boat, packed with explosives, rammed into the ship, killing 17 U.S. sailors. By the end of the 1990s, Osama bin Laden was no longer just a former fighter from Afghanistan. He was now the leader of a powerful terrorist network, capable of planning large international attacks. His message was spreading, and his followers were growing. The September 11th attacks. On the morning of September 11th, 2001, the world changed forever. That day, al-Qaeda, under the leadership of Osama bin Laden, carried out the deadliest terrorist attack in modern history. The plan was shocking in its simplicity and devastating in its impact. 19 men, all members of al-Qaeda, boarded 4 passenger airplanes in the United States. These men were not carrying guns or bombs. Instead, they planned to use the airplanes themselves as weapons. At 8:46 a.m., the first plane, American Airlines Flight 11, crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center in New York City. People around the world watched on live television as smoke poured from the building. At 9:03 a.m., just 17 minutes later, another plane, United Airlines Flight 175, struck the South Tower. By then, it was clear. This was not an accident. It was a coordinated attack. At 9:37 a.m., a third plane, American Airlines Flight 77, crashed into the Pentagon, the headquarters of the U.S. military, near Washington, D.C. A fourth plane, United Airlines Flight 93, was also hijacked. The passengers on that flight fought back against the hijackers. As a result, the plane crashed in a field in Pennsylvania at 10:03 a.m. instead of reaching its intended target, which was believed to be either the White House or the U.S. Capitol. Within 2 hours, the twin towers of the World Trade Center collapsed. Thousands of people were trapped inside, and the streets of New York filled with smoke, dust, and chaos. Nearly 3,000 people from over 90 different countries were killed that day. The world watched in horror. The United States was shocked, angry, and grieving. The attacks were the worst terrorist act in American history and one of the deadliest in the world. Very quickly, investigators identified Osama bin Laden and al-Qaeda as the group behind the attacks. Osama himself later released videos praising the attackers, calling them martyrs. The U.S. government, led by President George W. Bush, declared a global war on terror. Within weeks, the United States and its allies invaded Afghanistan to remove the Taliban from power and to capture Osama bin Laden. The September 11 attacks made Osama bin Laden the most wanted man in the world. His face was on every newspaper and every television channel. To some, he was a criminal and a terrorist. To others who shared his radical beliefs, he became a symbol of resistance. But one thing was clear. From that day forward, Osama bin Laden and al-Qaeda were at the center of world events. The war on terror and life in hiding. After the September 11 attacks, the United States reacted quickly. Just 1 month later, in October 2001, the U.S. military, together with allies, invaded Afghanistan. Their goal was clear. 1. Remove the Taliban from power because they were protecting Osama bin Laden. 2. Capture or kill Osama bin Laden and destroy al-Qaeda. At first, the plan seemed to work. The Taliban government fell quickly, and many al-Qaeda fighters were killed or captured, but Osama bin Laden managed to escape. In December 2001, American forces surrounded a place called Tora Bora, a mountain region in eastern Afghanistan, near the border with Pakistan. Intelligence reports suggested that Osama was hiding there with his followers. The U.S. bombed the mountains heavily, and Afghan fighters searched the caves. But somehow, Osama slipped away. Many believe he crossed the border into Pakistan during that time. From that point on, Osama bin Laden became a ghost. For years, nobody knew exactly where he was. He moved secretly between remote villages, mountains, and safe houses. He was always protected by loyal followers and often lived in very simple conditions, without phones or modern technology, so he could not be tracked. During this time, the U.S. continued the war on terror. American troops stayed in Afghanistan, and later they invaded Iraq in 2003. Believing that Saddam Hussein was linked to weapons of mass destruction and possibly terrorists. Although Saddam was captured, Osama remained free. Even though Osama was in hiding, he continued to influence the world. From time to time, he released video and audio recordings, usually through the media. In these messages, he praised attacks against the West, threatened new violence, and tried to inspire Muslims to join his cause. Meanwhile, the U.S. government placed a $25 million reward on his head, making him the most wanted man in the world. Special units like the CIA and Navy SEALs spent years trying to track him down. Living in hiding was not easy for Osama. He could not travel freely, use phones, or show himself in public. But he managed to survive for nearly a decade. Many people believe he stayed in northern Pakistan, moving from place to place, always surrounded by guards and trusted couriers who carried his messages. The search for Osama became one of the largest manhunts in history. For the U.S., capturing him was not just about justice. It was also about sending a message to the world that terrorism would not win. The death of Osama bin Laden. For almost 10 years after September 11, 2001, Osama bin Laden remained in hiding. The United States and its allies searched everywhere, in mountains, caves, and cities across Afghanistan and Pakistan. But he always seemed one step ahead. Finally, in 2010, U.S. intelligence agents discovered a lead. They were following one of Osama's trusted couriers, a man who carried messages for him. This courier eventually led them to a strange compound in the city of Abbottabad, Pakistan, only about 100 kilometers from the capital, Islamabad. The compound was unusual. It had high walls, barbed wire, and no internet or phone connections. The people living there never put out trash. Instead, they burned it inside. The U.S. suspected that someone very important was hiding there, possibly Osama bin Laden himself. For months, the CIA watched the house from secret locations. They even built a model of the compound to prepare for a possible attack. Still, they were not 100% sure Osama was inside. But President Barack Obama made the decision. They would take the risk. On the night of May 1st, 2011, May 2nd in Pakistan, a team of U.S. Navy SEALs flew secretly into Abbottabad in helicopters. The operation was called Neptune's Spear. The helicopters landed inside the compound. The SEALs quickly moved through the buildings, facing some resistance from men inside. Within minutes, they reached the top floor of the main house. There they found Osama bin Laden. According to reports, he was unarmed, but refused to surrender. The SEALs shot and killed him. The entire operation lasted about 40 minutes. The U.S. forces took Osama's body with them as they left. Later, American officials confirmed his identity using DNA tests. Within hours, President Obama addressed the world on television. Justice has been done. The news spread quickly. In the United States, people gathered in the streets, waving flags and celebrating. For many Americans, it was a moment of closure after nearly 10 years of fear and grief since 9/11. In other parts of the world, the reaction was mixed. Some people welcomed his death, seeing it as justice for the thousands of lives lost. Others mourned him as a martyr. Osama's body was buried at sea within 24 hours, according to Islamic tradition, though this decision was controversial. The death of Osama bin Laden did not end terrorism, and al-Qaeda still exists in different forms. But his killing was a symbolic victory for the United States and a powerful message. Even the most wanted man in the world could not hide forever. The story of Osama bin Laden is one of the most dramatic and tragic stories of our time. He was born into great wealth and privilege, yet he chose a path of violence and war. From his childhood in Saudi Arabia, to the mountains of Afghanistan, to the creation of al-Qaeda, and finally to his death in Pakistan, his life was full of conflict. Osama bin Laden believed he was fighting for Islam, but in reality, his actions caused the deaths of tens of thousands of innocent people. Muslims and non-Muslims alike. The September 11 attacks alone killed nearly 3,000 people and changed the world forever. Because of him, wars began in Afghanistan and Iraq. Because of him, airports and cities around the world changed how they worked, focusing on security. But for the majority of the world, he remains a terrorist who used religion as an excuse for violence. His death in 2011 did not end terrorism, but it did close one chapter of history. Today, al-Qaeda is weaker, but other groups like ISIS have taken its place. The struggle against extremism continues. So, what can we learn from this story? We learn how dangerous extremist ideas can be when mixed with money, power, and influence. We learn how one person's choices can affect the entire world, and we learn the importance of peace, understanding, and dialogue between nations and people. Osama bin Laden's life shows us that violence only creates more suffering. True strength comes from education, cooperation, and respect for others. And that brings us to the end of the story of Osama bin Laden, the man who went from a wealthy Saudi child to the most wanted terrorist in the world. What do you think about this story? Did you learn something new today? Do you think the world has become safer after his death? What lessons should young people learn from his life? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. If you enjoyed this video and want to hear more stories told in simple English to help you learn, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends who are also learning English. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next story.